Several-day marches through dense jungle. The roar of helicopter engines tearing across a burning sky. A wall of fire rolling forward after napalm strikes. Relentless heat. Suffocating humidity. Monsoon rains that soaked a man to the bone. Venomous insects. Snakes in the dark. Parasites under the skin. Conditions, unbearable. The enemy, ruthless. The mission, often unclear. For most people, the Vietnam War is something distant. A chapter in a book. A scene from Apocalypse Now. A drill instructor shouting in full metal jacket. But for Thomas Hale, it never became history. It became part of his nervous system. He was 19 when the draft letter arrived in rural Ohio. Thomas wasn't a rebel. He wasn't political. He fixed carburetors at his father's gas station and dreamed about buying a pickup truck that didn't stall in winter. The envelope changed everything. Basic training broke him down fast. Shaved head. Blistered palms. Mud in places he didn't know mud could reach. Drill sergeants didn't just train muscle. They trained reaction. Fire before thinking. Move before questioning. By the time he landed in Vietnam in 1968, Thomas felt prepared. He wasn't. The first breath hit him like steam from an open furnace. The jungle swallowed sound. Swallowed light. Swallowed certainty. Patrols lasted for days. Boots rotted from constant moisture. Rifles jammed if not cleaned obsessively. Every branch looked like a rifle barrel. Every shadow felt alive. The enemy rarely showed himself. But he was always there. Tripwires. Claymores. Sniper fire from nowhere. 3 weeks into deployment, Thomas lost Eddie Ramirez. Eddie talked too much. Laughed too loud. Planned to open a barbecue joint in Texas. A single crack of gunfire. Eddie dropped mid-sentence. Thomas remembered kneeling beside him. Calling his name. Seeing eyes that were still open, but empty. There was no music. No slow-motion heroism. Just the metallic smell of blood mixing with jungle rot. That night, Thomas didn't cry. Something colder happened. He stopped imagining the future. The war became mechanical. Walk. Scan. Sweat. Wait. React. One afternoon, their unit moved through a village suspected of harboring fighters. Orders were tense. Unclear. A child ran between huts. Someone shouted. A rifle fired. The silence afterward was heavier than gunfire. Thomas carried that moment longer than any firefight. Months later, during a night ambush, a mortar exploded close enough to throw him into a tree. White light. Ringing ears. Darkness. When he woke, he couldn't hear properly. His head throbbed like artillery inside his skull. The medic called it a concussion. Thomas called it survival. He finished his tour. He boarded a transport plane with 2 duffel bags and a stare that didn't blink enough. When he landed back in the United States, there were no parades. The country was divided. Protests filled streets. People argued about politics. No one asked him what the jungle sounded like at 3 a.m. Back in Ohio, everything felt artificial. Supermarket lights were too bright. Crowds too loud. Fireworks on the 4th of July sent him diving to the ground before he could think. Sleep became a battlefield. Helicopter blades returned in the ceiling fan's hum. Napalm bloomed behind closed eyelids. Eddie's unfinished sentence replayed on a loop. Doctors eventually used a term that wasn't widely understood yet. Post-traumatic stress disorder. PTSD. To Thomas, it felt like weakness. Like failing a war that should have ended. He tried to work at the gas station again. A customer slammed a car hood. Thomas grabbed him by the collar before realizing where he was. He quit 2 weeks later. Headaches from the concussion never fully left. Sometimes he'd lose words mid-sentence. Sometimes he'd forget what room he had entered. For a while, he tried to drown the noise in alcohol. Bottles lined up like silent witnesses. Friends drifted away. Family didn't understand. The war's over, his father said. But Thomas knew the truth. War doesn't end when you leave it. It relocates. There was a night, years later, when he sat alone in his truck outside town. Engine off. Darkness surrounding him. He thought about Eddie. About the child in the village. About the mortar blast. He realized something dangerous. He had survived Vietnam. But he wasn't living. The next morning, he walked into a veteran support center. The room smelled of cheap coffee. Metal folding chairs. Men who avoided eye contact. At first, no one spoke. Then one did. Then another. Stories came out slowly. Halting. Raw. Thomas heard his own pain echoed back at him in different voices. For the first time, he didn't feel broken. He felt wounded. And wounds can heal. Not disappear. Not erase. But heal. He started therapy. Learned breathing techniques for flashbacks. Learned to recognize triggers before they controlled him. He found work as a mechanic again, this time in a larger garage. Engines were predictable. Metal obeyed physics. Machines didn't lie awake at night. Years passed. He married a woman who understood silence. Who knew that some nights required a lamp left on. Who didn't ask questions when he sat on the porch staring at nothing. The nightmares never fully stopped. The headaches still came in waves. But something changed. Instead of fighting the memories, he began integrating them. He spoke at local schools. Not about politics. Not about strategy. About consequences. About youth sent into complexity. About coming home different. Now he is 76. His hands tremble slightly when he pours coffee. Age, and history. He sits on that same porch in Ohio, modern cars passing quietly down the street. Across from him sits a young man with a digital recorder. Most people think of it like a movie, the young man says. Thomas gives a faint smile. It wasn't a movie, he replies. There was no soundtrack. He pauses when he speaks of Eddie. His jaw tightens when he mentions the village. His eyes go distant at the memory of the mortar blast. For you, he says softly, it's history. He looks toward the trees. Peaceful. Green. Still. For me, it's muscle memory. The recorder continues blinking red. What kept you going? The young man asks. Thomas thinks for a long moment. Responsibility, he says. To the guys who didn't come back. To prove their survival meant something. He leans back slowly. The war tried to kill my body, he adds. The years after tried to kill my spirit. He taps his chest lightly. But I'm still here. The jungle did not erase him. The nightmares did not defeat him. The silence did not consume him. Survival was the first battle. Learning to live, that was the second. And on a quiet American evening, telling his story not with anger, not with glory, but with honesty, Thomas Hale wins again. Not with a weapon, but with resilience.